Today, he didn't answer your calls. He didn't send a message either. Yesterday, he also didn't respond in any way. And now, there is complete silence. What does this remind you of? Actually, of much more than you think. Because cutting off contact doesn't just mean not talking, it's also a power game. And the crucial thing is this: whoever doesn't recognize it usually starts to blame themselves. Maybe exactly as you are doing right now. In this video, I will show you the intention of a person who cuts off contact with you, and the invisible psychological message hidden behind this behavior. I will also explain what you should do in such a situation. But I must warn you right from the start. We will not continue with emotional expectations, but with reality. Because sometimes the one who stays silent loses nothing, but the one who accepts this silence gradually loses themselves. Now I will ask you a question. Has the silence of a person ever exhausted you so emotionally that you felt empty inside? If your answer is yes, simply write "clear attitude" in the comments and share your thoughts on this topic. Because what I will explain to you in this video is not only about understanding him, but about rebuilding yourself. If you are ready, I'll begin. From now on, it will no longer be his silence that sets the rules, but your clear attitude. A person can be silent, but sometimes that silence is louder than a scream. The person in front of you says nothing, explains nothing, walks away, and you search for answers to all those questions. But the truth is, silence itself can be an answer, and that answer often points to a reality you don't want to see. Even though it seems like breaking communication is a passive act that leaves you in emptiness, in reality, it is a very active one. You belong in the background. I am superior to you. Follow me and feed my ego. Consciously or unconsciously, the person who behaves this way wants to take control. Because instead of acting through communication, they prefer to throw you into your own inner chaos through their silence. The sad thing about this is the following. You interpret his silence as calmness, as a sign that maybe he just needs time. But in reality, this person has usually already made their decision about you. They punish you with silence, test your patience, or, most painfully, increase the emotional distance. And you start tormenting yourself, asking, "What did I do wrong?" Carl Jung says, "When a person ignores you, they are not rejecting you, but what you trigger within them." That means his silence has nothing directly to do with you, but with his attempt to suppress the emotions you awaken in him. Therefore, every withdrawal is not a defense against you, but an expression of his own inner conflict. But there is something important to note here. If his withdrawal and silence drive you into hopelessness, then the problem doesn't lie in his retreat, but in your failure to protect your own boundaries. A person who clearly defines their boundaries can also set an inner boundary towards someone who offers no explanation, and walk away in peace. The conclusion is this: withdrawal is sometimes the most passive yet most effective way to end a relationship. That's why your reaction to the silence that destroys you inside should no longer be understanding, but a clear, "I understand." You want to believe that he will reach out again. Maybe he just doesn't feel ready yet. Maybe he just needs some time, you tell yourself, while in reality he's testing you. Unknowingly, these thoughts turn you into someone who waits. And the longer you wait, the more exhausted you become, quietly feeding yourself with new hope again and again. But the real question is, are you truly waiting for his message, or for an old wound to finally heal? In psychology, this is called attachment continuity. When a relationship hasn't been clearly ended, when there's been no open and honest conversation, your mind tries to fill that emptiness on its own, and that often creates an expectation disguised as hope. But in truth, this isn't real hope. It's an illusion created to fill an inner void. Carl Jung says, "Unprocessed emotions are repeated by the mind." This means your hopeful waiting is not only for that person, but for what you hoped to find through them, the feeling of being valued. Because when someone who once made you feel worthy suddenly covers you in silence, you begin to feel empty. And humans create hope to escape that emptiness. So why do you still hope? Because his return seems like it would answer all the open questions inside you. But the truth is, it's not his answer that resolves the question in your mind. It's your own stance. Waiting only pulls you away from your path. Awareness heals. In the end, it's often not him you need, but your own faith in yourself. But you don't need excuses anymore. Because if you follow him while he stays silent, then you are the one who truly loses. Now is the time to ask yourself this question. Do I really want him? Or am I just postponing the moment when I finally recognize myself? What do you feel when someone suddenly distances themselves from you? First, you try to understand what happened. Then you start to think. After that, a chain of nagging questions begins. What happened? What did I do wrong? Did I make a mistake? But these questions aren't yours. They're part of his game of superiority. Because sometimes lack of communication is nothing more than a form of manipulation. But it's a kind of manipulation so powerful that it turns your world upside down and destroys you from within. The person who acts this way doesn't want to control you, but your reaction. He doesn't write to you because he knows you won't forget him. He creates distance because he knows you will follow. This situation, especially for people with high emotional needs, intensifies the feeling of dependency. Instead of facing his silence, you try to save the relationship. And at that very moment, control falls into his hands. This isn't a coincidence. It's a deliberate strategy. Through silence, he leaves you in emptiness. And the longer you stay there, the more he triggers your emotional needs, makes you feel guilty, and controls you through that guilt. Without doing anything, he gets from you what he wants. Love, return, apology, explanation. Maybe you did everything right, and yet he brought you so much under his control that you tried to fix his silence. But that's not something within your power. According to Carl Jung, a suppressed emotion must eventually find expression. But some people don't do that through communication. They do it through withdrawal. And that withdrawal isn't a form of self-expression, but a seemingly harmless way to keep the other person under control. Yet this passive-aggressive behavior is just as destructive as an argument that never reaches a resolution, because it sends you the invisible message that you are worthless. That's why you must remain calm in the face of silence. Because the more you react, the stronger his silence becomes. The more you write, call, or ask for explanations, the deeper you trap yourself in a dead end. While you feel lost and empty, he simply continues with his life. But your task is not to end his refusal to communicate. It's to focus on your own stance. If his silence is a strategy, then you change the rules through your attitude. Ultimately, if someone doesn't want to communicate with you, that's their choice. And your choice, from now on, is not to surrender to that silence. And don't forget, the one who cuts off communication doesn't lose you. He loses his maturity. Because a mature person ends something through conversation, not by running away. Silence may sometimes appear mature, but it's often just the disguise of emotional inadequacy. That's why your greatest strength against this silence is your own silence. But here's the key difference. His silence comes from ego, yours from awareness. His silence seeks control, yours seeks freedom. One is the silence of escape, the other the silence of acceptance. And don't forget, sometimes the strongest response is to say nothing. Because when you remain silent, it's not you who loses,